There is a moment nobody really prepares you for. No argument, no goodbye, no final message sitting there unanswered. Just silence. One day, the notifications suddenly stop. The energy feels different, and somehow the loudest thing in the room becomes everything that is not being said. This is not ordinary quiet. This is the kind of silence that keeps you awake at 2 a.m., replaying old conversations in your head, searching for the exact moment when something changed. Because when both people become silent, something deeper may be happening beneath the surface. It is not always about being busy. It is not always about needing space. Sometimes it is about two people standing on opposite sides of an emotional bridge, both looking across, both wondering who will take the first step. Pride, fear, attachment, uncertainty, and expectations that were never spoken begin crashing into each other. And here is the part most people fail to understand. Silence is never completely empty. It communicates something. It can be a message. It can be a test. It can even become the turning point that determines what happens to the connection from this moment forward. Right now, emotions may be becoming stronger underneath everything that looks calm. Questions are building. Doubts are growing. The balance between two people is changing. And whether this silence eventually creates reconnection or permanent distance may depend on what happens next. Stay with me, because once you understand what this silence is really revealing, you may never look at a quiet connection in the same way again. Silence can feel louder than words because your mind is naturally uncomfortable with uncertainty. When someone speaks, even when their words hurt, you at least have information. You know what they are saying. You can respond. You can process it. You can decide what to do next. In some way, you regain a little control. But when someone says nothing, that control disappears. Suddenly, your mind has to deal with empty spaces, unanswered questions, and missing information. And your mind does not always fill those spaces with peaceful explanations. Usually, it begins creating possibilities. The moment communication suddenly stops, your nervous system can become more alert. You start going backward through your memories. You remember their tone. You remember the last conversation. You look at the final message again. You think about small details that seemed meaningless at the time, but suddenly feel important. You begin asking yourself whether you missed something. Was there a sign? Did their feelings change? Did you say something wrong? Did they misunderstand you? Every unanswered question can start feeling like a possible threat. That is why silence can create such a strange combination of heaviness in your chest and constant movement in your thoughts. Uncertainty creates tension, and tension makes the mind search for answers. But there is another reason silence can feel even more intense. It feels personal. Words can be confusing. Words can be misunderstood. But silence often feels deliberate. It can feel chosen. Your mind may interpret it as rejection, disappointment, judgment, or emotional withdrawal, even when that interpretation may not actually reflect what the other person is feeling. And this is where things become even more interesting. When two people are both silent, the silence can create a psychological space where each person starts reacting to what they imagine the other person is thinking. One person thinks, maybe they do not care anymore. The other may be thinking, maybe they want me to reach out first. One is waiting because of fear, the other is waiting because of pride. Neither wants to be the person who appears to care more. Neither wants to risk being ignored. So both remain still while emotions continue moving underneath the surface. This is why silence between two people can sometimes feel completely different from ordinary distance. There is tension inside it. There is expectation inside it. There are things both people may want to say, but do not know how to express. And when nobody speaks, the mind begins writing its own story. That story may be accurate, or it may be completely wrong. You might believe they have moved on when they are actually struggling with their own emotions. You might believe they are indifferent when they are simply afraid of being vulnerable. You might believe the connection is over when both people are secretly waiting for some kind of sign. But you could also be dealing with someone who has genuinely chosen distance. That is why silence should never be treated as automatic proof of love, rejection, or hidden feelings. It is information, but it is incomplete information. And that distinction matters, because if you react to an assumption instead of reality, you can easily turn a temporary silence into permanent separation. So before you make your next move, pay attention to what the silence is actually showing you, not what fear tells you, not what hope tells you, what the pattern tells you. There is also something powerful that happens when communication disappears. You begin noticing the emotional role that person played in your everyday life. Their messages may have been small, but they created a rhythm. Their presence may have felt ordinary, but it gave your day a certain emotional structure. Then suddenly, that structure disappears. You notice the empty space. You reach for your phone without thinking. You expect a notification that never comes. You wonder whether they are checking their phone too. You imagine them seeing your name and deciding not to respond. And every one of those thoughts creates another emotional loop. This is why silence can become addictive to the mind. There is no clear ending, so your brain keeps searching for one. It keeps returning to the same memories because it believes there must be an answer hidden somewhere. But sometimes there is no secret sentence you missed. Sometimes the situation simply needs time. Sometimes the other person is processing something you cannot see. Sometimes they are protecting themselves. Sometimes they are waiting for you. And sometimes they are letting go. The difficult part is that silence does not immediately tell you which one it is. That is why the healthiest response is not to panic and not to create a dramatic story in your head. Observe. Let the pattern reveal itself. If someone consistently wants connection, their actions eventually begin to show it. If someone consistently chooses distance, that pattern also becomes clear. You do not have to force an answer out of silence. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop chasing the explanation and allow reality to reveal itself. And remember this, silence does not always mean nothing is happening. Sometimes silence is where the most important emotional decisions are being made. Now think about what happens when both people are waiting for the other person to move first. This creates a silent battle that neither person openly admits is happening. Each person may be thinking, if they really cared, they would reach out. But the other person could be thinking exactly the same thing. One waits, then the other waits longer. Days pass. The emotional distance grows, not necessarily because the feelings disappeared, but because nobody wants to expose themselves first. Pride starts protecting the heart. Fear starts protecting the ego. And suddenly, two people who may still care about each other become trapped behind their own defenses. This is where silence can become dangerous. Not because silence itself is always bad, but because prolonged silence allows assumptions to become beliefs. A person can start believing that they were forgotten. The other person can start believing they were rejected. Eventually, both may react to a story that neither person ever confirmed. That is how connections can fade without a real goodbye. No dramatic ending, no final argument, just two people waiting, interpreting, protecting themselves, and slowly becoming strangers. But here is the question you need to ask yourself. Are you staying silent because you genuinely need peace? or because you are hoping the other person will prove that they care. Those are two very different things. Silence used for healing can create clarity. Silence used as a test can create confusion. And silence used to punish someone can create emotional damage that becomes difficult to repair. So before you decide what this quiet moment means, look honestly at your own reason for remaining silent. Your answer may reveal more than you expect. The truth is, silence can change the emotional balance between two people very quickly. When communication is constant, both people know where they stand. They receive reassurance. They receive reactions. They receive small reminders that the connection still exists. But when those signals disappear, uncertainty takes their place. The person who was always available may suddenly become unavailable. The person who always initiated may stop initiating. And that change can make the other person notice the connection in a way they never did before. Absence has a way of making patterns visible. When someone is always there, their presence can become familiar. When they suddenly step back, the emotional space they occupied becomes obvious. But do not mistake this for a strategy. You do not need to disappear just to make someone miss you. You do not need to manipulate silence to create a reaction. Real emotional strength comes from being able to step back without turning your distance into a game. If someone notices your absence, that is their response to reality. If they reach out, you have new information. If they do not, you also have information. Either way, you learn something. And this is the moment many people get wrong. They become obsessed with what the other person is thinking instead of asking what the silence is teaching them about the connection. Maybe the silence is showing you that both of you are afraid to communicate honestly. Maybe it is revealing an unhealthy pattern of chasing and withdrawing. Maybe it is giving both people enough distance to finally understand what they actually want. Or maybe it is showing you that the relationship has reached its natural ending. You cannot know everything immediately, but you can observe. You can remain grounded. You can let actions speak louder than imagined meanings. So if you are currently sitting in that silence, wondering what it means, do not rush to fill the empty space with fear. Take a breath. Step away from the constant checking. Stop rereading every old message looking for hidden clues. You do not need to solve the entire connection tonight. Sometimes, clarity arrives when you stop forcing it. Let time reveal consistency. Let actions reveal intention. Let the absence show you what the presence may have hidden. And most importantly, do not abandon your own emotional stability just because someone else has become quiet. Their silence may be about you, or it may be about something happening inside them that you cannot see. Either way, you deserve to remain steady, because the next chapter of this connection should not be decided by panic, pride, or desperation. It should be decided by honesty, emotional maturity, and what both people are actually willing to do. And if there is still something real between you, silence does not have to be the end. Sometimes it becomes the pause before an honest conversation. Sometimes it becomes the moment when someone finally realizes what they have been avoiding. And sometimes it becomes the clearest answer you were afraid to receive. Either way, pay attention, because when two people stop speaking, the silence may not be saying nothing. It may be revealing everything. Without clarity, your mind starts creating meaning. And most of the time, those assumptions turn inward and become self-blame. Did I talk too much? Did I hold back too much? Did I make a mistake? Was I not important enough? Could I really be replaced that easily? These questions can become louder when there is no answer to stop them. Silence also takes away emotional regulation. A real conversation gives emotions a rhythm. There are pauses, replies, reactions, reassurance, and moments where you can finally understand where you stand. But when that rhythm suddenly disappears, your emotions have nowhere to settle. They keep circling inside your mind. They echo. That is why a silent phone can sometimes feel more painful than an argument. At least conflict proves that both people are still engaged. Even anger contains attention. Silence gives you nothing solid to hold on to. So you begin questioning your importance and wondering whether the connection still matters. Then there is the power dynamic. Silence feels so intense because it can make you feel as though control has moved away from you. The person who stops communicating appears to control the timing, the pace, and even the emotional temperature of the connection. Even when that silence was never meant to control anything, it can still feel like distance. And distance threatens connection. That is why silence is not truly empty. It becomes crowded with questions, possible meanings, imagined answers, an emotional noise created by a mind that desperately wants certainty. And this is where things become even more important. When silence becomes mutual, it does not necessarily mean that nothing is happening. Sometimes it means almost everything is happening beneath the surface. When two people are silent at the same time, both may be experiencing strong emotions, while neither feels safe enough to become the first person to speak. Emotionally, it becomes a standoff between vulnerability and self-protection. On one side is fear of choosing the wrong words, fear of appearing too invested, fear of caring more than the other person, fear that reaching out will lead to silence, rejection, or an answer that hurts even more than the uncertainty. So silence becomes a form of protection. It becomes armor, not because the feelings have disappeared, but because those feelings feel too exposed to place at risk. And on the other side, there is expectation. Each person quietly assumes that the other person should make the first move. Each waits for a sign. Each hopes the other will finally break the silence. But when nobody does, silence starts being interpreted as evidence. If they do not reach out, they must not care. If they cared, they would say something. And this is where misunderstanding begins growing inside the connection. Both people may actually be waiting for reassurance while unknowingly refusing to give the very reassurance they secretly want to receive. Think about how strange that is. Two people can want the same thing and still move farther apart because neither wants to risk going first. Mutual silence can often be a sign of emotional overload. The connection may have reached a point where feelings became stronger and faster than the ability to communicate them. Instead of processing those emotions together, both people retreat into themselves. It is not always emotional emptiness. Sometimes it is emotional flooding. And if you understand this part, you start seeing silence very differently. There is another layer that often gets overlooked, and that is pride. Silence can become a way of protecting your dignity when your emotions feel uneven or uncertain. Reaching out can feel like giving something away. It can feel like surrendering control. And nobody wants to feel as though they are the one chasing while the other person simply watches. So both remain quiet, each hoping the other will reveal their feelings first. Each waits for the other person to make the move. Each tries to look unaffected, even when the silence is affecting them deeply. But emotionally, this kind of silence is unstable. It can create an opportunity for reconnection if one person eventually chooses courage instead of control. One honest message can sometimes break a cycle that has lasted for days or even weeks. But if the silence continues for too long, something slowly begins changing inside the bond. Warmth can turn into distance. Curiosity can turn into assumptions. Hope can become frustration. And what originally began as emotional protection can gradually become emotional detachment. This is why mutual silence should not automatically be treated as the end, but it should be recognized as a crossroads. Something is being decided, whether consciously or unconsciously. The question is, what happens next? Does fear continue making the decisions? Or does honesty finally become stronger than fear? Because once silence becomes a habit, breaking it becomes harder. And the longer two people remain inside their own assumptions, the more difficult it becomes to remember what the connection actually felt like before the silence began. Stay with this, because the next part explains why no contact can create a completely different kind of emotional power. No contact is rarely only about needing space. Sometimes, whether people realize it or not, it also involves control. The moment communication stops, a subtle shift in emotional power can begin. But power here does not necessarily mean dominance or manipulation. It can simply mean emotional leverage. The person who appears less affected by the silence can be seen as having the stronger position, even if they are privately struggling just as much. Silence creates imbalance, because uncertainty weakens the emotional footing of the person who wants answers. The person who wants clarity feels exposed. The person who remains quiet can appear calm, distant, and completely in control. But appearances can be misleading. Someone can look detached while thinking about the situation constantly. Someone can seem unaffected while privately checking their phone again and again. Still, perception changes behavior. One person may begin checking notifications more often. They replay conversations. They imagine different scenarios. They question what went wrong. They wonder whether they still matter. Meanwhile, the person who remains silent, intentionally or unintentionally, sets the pace simply by not responding. And here is something people rarely talk about. Emotional power during no contact is extremely unstable. It can change from one day to the next. The moment silence is used as protection, it can also become a cage. The person maintaining the silence may eventually feel trapped by the very distance they created. To reach out can feel like giving up their position. To remain silent means continuing to carry the emotional weight alone. So even when connection is still desired, an invisible negotiation can be taking place underneath the silence. Every day without communication can send an unspoken message. It can sound like, "I can live without you." Whether that message is true or simply a defense, it can still reshape the emotional dynamic. Both people begin adjusting their expectations. Attachment changes. Attraction can shift. Respect can change, depending on how each person interprets the other person's independence. The absence of contact creates new information, even when nobody says anything. One person may begin thinking, maybe they are completely fine without me. The other may be wondering, why have they not reached out yet? And suddenly, both are responding to assumptions instead of facts. This is why no contact can become so emotionally complicated. At first, one person may believe they have gained control by staying silent, but silence has a limit. It cannot create emotional influence forever. Eventually, the other person may stop waiting. They may regain their balance. They may become less emotionally dependent on an answer. And once that happens, the entire dynamic can change. The person who originally felt powerless may become calmer and more detached. Meanwhile, the person who depended on silence to maintain distance may suddenly realize that their influence is disappearing because the connection itself is fading. That is the part most people do not see coming. The person who thought silence would make the other chase may eventually discover that silence can also teach the other person how to stop chasing. And once someone learns how to stand emotionally on their own again, the old power balance may never return to what it was before. So true strength during no contact is not about who can stay silent the longest. It's not about winning some invisible contest. It is about who can remain emotionally grounded without needing to control what happens next. Real emotional strength means being able to tolerate uncertainty without allowing it to destroy your sense of worth. It means understanding that another person's silence does not automatically define your value. You can care and still remain grounded. You can miss someone without chasing them. You can want clarity without begging for it. And you can leave space without turning that space into a punishment. This is where silence becomes less about power and more about self-awareness. If someone reaches out, you can decide how you want to respond. If they do not, that silence eventually becomes information too. You do not have to force someone to communicate. You do not have to keep proving your value. You do not have to spend every night decoding a lack of response. Let behavior reveal what words cannot. Let consistency show you what temporary emotion cannot. Because when you stop fighting to control the outcome, you begin seeing the connection more clearly. Maybe the silence is temporary. Maybe someone needs time. Maybe both people are afraid. Maybe one person is waiting for courage. Or maybe the connection is slowly coming to an end. You cannot force certainty before reality is ready to show it, but you can control what you do with the uncertainty. And that is where your real power begins. Not in who breaks the silence first, not in who waits the longest, not in who appears less affected. Real power is being able to face the silence without losing yourself inside it. And once you understand that, no contact stops being a battle over who cares more and becomes something much more revealing. A moment where both people are forced to decide whether they want control, distance, or honest connection. Emotional regulation is what changes everything. The person who can sit with discomfort without immediately reacting from fear often has the real advantage. That does not mean staying silent forever or refusing to communicate. It means knowing when to speak and choosing communication from a calm place instead of desperation. No contact can reveal who is trying to control the situation and who genuinely wants connection. And once the emotional noise settles, the real power dynamic becomes much easier to see. Silence can capture attention, but emotional stability creates respect. When two people stop speaking at the same time, the emotional struggle is rarely equal, even when it looks equal from the outside. The person who appears to be struggling more may simply be the person with the stronger emotional attachment, not someone with less strength or less value. Attachment can make silence feel much louder. The more meaning you place on a connection, the more powerful the absence becomes. People who deeply value emotional closeness often feel the silence physically before they can even explain it mentally. Their chest feels tight. Their sleep becomes restless. Their hand reaches for the phone without thinking. They keep checking for a message, a sign, or some small indication that something has changed, even though they already know the situation has not changed. They are not necessarily desperate. Their mind and nervous system are simply searching for connection and resolution. Silence gives them neither, and that is why it can feel so intense. But there is another side to this story, and understanding it can change the way you interpret someone else's silence. Some people deal with emotional pressure by pulling away. From the outside, they can look completely unaffected. They may seem calm, distant, or even indifferent, but their emotional struggle may simply arrive later. While one person begins processing the feelings immediately, the other may push those feelings aside in order to maintain a sense of stability. In the short term, silence can feel safer for someone who becomes overwhelmed by emotional pressure. There are fewer difficult conversations, fewer questions, less immediate tension. They can breathe. But avoiding an emotion does not make that emotion disappear. It only delays the moment when it has to be faced. And the longer the silence continues, the more emotional weight can eventually build underneath it. What first felt like relief can slowly become emptiness. The realization usually does not arrive dramatically. It can come quietly, almost unnoticed, after the other person has already started emotionally stepping back. Suddenly, the silence that once felt comfortable feels different. The absence becomes noticeable. The missing connection starts to carry more weight. And this is something many people misunderstand. Different people can experience the exact same silence in completely different ways. One person may believe that communication is proof of care, so silence feels like rejection. Another person may believe that space creates safety, so silence feels normal or even necessary. Neither person is necessarily seeing the entire picture. They are interpreting the same situation through completely different emotional patterns. And here is the part you should remember. The person who feels the discomfort first is not automatically the person who loses. Sometimes they are simply the person processing the truth sooner.